Hey, Heart family. How you doing? How you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching this across the globe and throughout the various time zones. Yes, so we're trying something new with the HARP platform across our social media as well as the website. If you haven't had a chance to check out the latest post on the website, again, this is your reminder weekly. Go check it out. That's at www.harpnow.org. We have amazing things coming out for you. Again, like I just wanted to pop by and do a quick session with y'all. It is still Black History Month. We're on the final day, and I'll be remiss if I didn't touch on some of the things that we have been posting about, right? And a lot of things have been happening, even throughout our various communities and across the nation and across the globe, with regards to harassment and assault. Again, if you're new to HARP, this is the harassment and assault reporting platform where we discuss all things harassment or assault related. Again, we're talking street harassment, transit harassment, police brutality, domestic violence, or any other intimate partner abuse, child abuse, workplace harassment. Right, all these things, really do affect how we end up experiencing our lived environment, our built environment. And so, if you have had a chance, hopefully, you've had a chance to go to the website. Bam. There is there's so much going on, like on the website, especially on the blog, as well as our resource page. Also, we do have a shop. Grab your merch, grab your HARP merch, right? If you're unfamiliar, get your HARP on, okay? And as always, if you would like to share your experiences, you could HARP it. You could share your story via the resource page or the blog page. Yeah, I'll do a quick intro for us. So if you go on the website, right on the homepage, we have our quick intros. You can connect with us across our social media platforms: that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as YouTube. Tell you a little bit about ourselves. And again, if you're unfamiliar about the HARP It buttons, right? The HARP It buttons help you to be able to quickly submit an incident, right? Because at the end of the day, we're in our early phases of we're still crowdsourcing data, and that's the key reason why HARP was formed was as a professional in this area of street and transit harassment related topics from a transportation perspective. Um, we realized that there is a need for contextual data, especially when it comes to harassment incidents, right? Whether that is street harassment, transit harassment, workplace harassment, there's a gap in contextual data. And what does that mean? Being able to correlate, right, the qualitative aspect of what harassment looks like, right? For whether it's gender-based incidents or age-related incidents, right? Harassment looks differently, depending how young or older you are, depending on what kind of work you may be doing. Where are you walking, or where are you, what spaces or places are we navigating? Where are you regionally located? Not only locally, but also across the globe. Harassment, presents itself differently. And, at the end of the day, if we are going to change the narrative, if we are going to be able to, impact people's, ideologies and to be able to positively impact how policies are created in our neighborhoods, in our communities. They always asking, where is the data? They always think, show me the data. So, for HARP, that is our biggest mission, is to be able to bridge that data gap of contextual data that shows how, people who present as female or feminine in the feminine form, right, oftentimes have a higher likelihood of experiencing harassment or assault-related incidents. People who are non-binary or non-gender conforming or gender variant, right? They experience harassment and assault incidents differently. Black people, right? Listen, fam, especially like nod to Black History Month as we're in. Doing anything while Black could literally have you arrested, detained, or terminated. Let's say fam, we cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore that fact. Yeah, absolutely. Contextual data matters. And the way we collect the data, who is reporting these incidents, right? And even when it comes to reporting, a lot of people oftentimes forget and think, well, because it didn't directly happen to me, I have nothing to add to the incident. But that's not true. Witnesses are just as important as those who survive these incidents, right? Because we help to provide a fuller perspective of what really happens when these incidents occur, especially when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences. Bam, right? Whether you are the person directly being impacted or you are navigating that environment, you're in that environment as a child, or as a child experiencing it, or as a sibling watching or experiencing these incidents, it absolutely has long-term mental and even physical, health effects of a person's well-being. And so, with HARP, we just wanted to provide very simple, one-stop shop place for us to be able to not only collect the data, but also, be able to, share also with you based on the trends that we're seeing, and provide beyond just the statistical analysis. Also provide a qualitative, reflection. Making the technical practical. That's one of my biggest things. Like, always harping about. Haha. Is we need to make the technical practical throughout our lived experiences, right? And oftentimes, really, it's about validating people's very real lived experiences, right? As a transportation professional, one of the things that I've heard um, often is, especially with my fellow, Black professionals in my industry, is how, damn, a lot of the research, oftentimes, especially research that is correlated to behavior or experiences by Black and Brown communities, it's the data is simply supporting what we have intrinsically known and experienced for ages. It's like they're not telling us anything new. If anything, they're learning, they're validating what we have been saying all along, right? And even, I mean, even take into context COVID right now, right? When COVID hit, it also had very interesting implications in how harassment or assault related incidents occur, right? Whether it was how the police responded differently to Black versus, white people who were not complying with the mask mandates, right? We're seeing people being, thrown out or ripped out from like the public transit or public spaces, like violently, like if they're Black. But if there were non-Black people, right, it was like, oh, okay, listen, just pull up your mask, or do you have a mask? Here's a mask. And again, different countries address that need differently, right? In other nations, we saw where the police actually had extra masks for people who did not have masks on, right? Instead of beating them and harassing them and handcuffing them and taking them to the precinct, like it's very different. And so yeah, so if you go on the page, our core mission is to increase education and awareness of harassment and assault trends globally. But again, these are global context issues with very, very real local solutions, right? Because change starts from the local perspective as well. It's like, if we want global change, we have to start locally, right? In our respective communities. And so again, if you see something, say something, as the saying goes. And more importantly, when it comes to harassment and assault, remember to harp it. Harp it now. if you get my pun there, my yeah. I would say a dad joke, but it's like, no, it's like a young auntie joke. Yay. Okay. So on the page, we also provide some statistics on harassment and assault trends. We provide a resource tab which provides more information on how you can empower others to be the change. Providing support group links, mental health links, as well as legal aid and advocacy opportunities, if that's something that you are interested in, right? Also, we have the blog, again, as I mentioned earlier. The blog is where we get a bit more informal. We encourage you to submit your experiences, because I am sure, if even like looking back on my experience, like it's cathartic, it's helpful when it feels like your story is heard, that it's not just your imagination of what may or may not have happened. And so, yeah, if you would like to, submit your story, your experiences, with harassment or assault incidents. Do feel free to share, at your own comfort and timing. Absolutely, we support that. Because you're more than just a statistics. You're more than just the numbers that show, hey, these are the percentages of harassment happening in this region. No, there are very real lives affected, right? Not only directly, not only directly, but indirectly as well, right? Those secondary experiences. And then obviously, we have a page dedicated to police brutality related incidents, right? Because oftentimes, even when we talk about police brutality or police related incidents, people don't break it down to the fact that there is a harassment and or assault related component, which sometimes does lead to that homicide outcome. That's these are facts. I mean, we just honored Ahmaud Arbery's 1 year remembrance, and for me that was tough. That was because yeah, 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 yeah. Because he was literally just jogging. He was just literally just living, minding his business, and he experienced and he unfortunately experienced street harassment, right, by people who were driving. That transit harassment, okay, um, and it was mishandled across the board, and and that's the thing. We really need to start breaking down the technicalities of how these incidents occur. Like we have to, really expand how we explain these lived experiences, because for some reason, there are folks in our communities who literally like, well, I don't get it. That doesn't apply to me. I don't understand that. Right. And you have to speak the people's language for them to connect. It helps when we connect with people where they are, and to validate people's very real lived experiences. And so, yeah, especially when it comes to police brutality related incidents, if you have a moment, we do currently have 2 surveys, right? So I'll give a quick recap on your call to action, right? If you get anything out of this, right, you can do 2 things. You can HARP it, which is to submit an incident via our HARP it tool. And okay, so one of the HARP it is for harassment or general harassment or assault related incidents. And the HARP it under the police brutality tab is for police related incidents, whether you are, and you can HARP it as an experiencer or as a witness, right? Again, because I said there is validity to those who witness, right? Witness these experiences. Because even me, sometimes, oftentimes I'm not the primary recipient of that action, but I'm a witness. Like if somebody is being pulled over, or they've been pulled over, like I'm not gonna interrupt. I'm not gonna interrupt that experience, but I will pull over and wait. And usually I record. I mean, because again, I don't know the person. I don't know how things are gonna go, but I will, I'll pull over and wait until they've been released, and then I just go ahead and report that. I submit that entry because it helps. Because even when you look at the late George Floyd, it was a witness. It was a witness who happened to have been recording and was the one who was able to share, and help us connect with that very very just traumatic experience. And I just, like, and as much as we don't like to see those images, it's very triggering to see those images. It is also very powerful, right? That we've come to an age where folks are really beginning to see the very real reality that people, like Black people, I would say people of color, but especially Black people, have been talking about this for ages. It's nothing new, right? And I believe who said, was it Will Smith? He was like, "Oh no, like it's not necessarily that these incidents have increased. It's just that we now have a greater awareness of it. We have a greater um, um, access to these experiences in real time, or in quasi real time." And so, that's what we're trying to do. That's what HARP is. That's the effort of HARP, is to be able to translate the perception of what the trends are with the reality of it, right? And making sure that the data we collect is absolutely like reflective of how society is behaving, so that we're able to address any changes that may need to be made, be especially from an education or awareness incentive. Like, to me, that's important. We really need to highlight that, the need for better education, better collaboration across the platforms and across the organizations and initiatives that are doing this work, right? Because there are people doing the work already, and we need to support and collaborate and partner up, wherever possible, to for the greater good. There is one of my I like speaking in like proverbs, because to me it makes sense. It connects in a more like higher level. So there's a Swahili saying, it's like chovya chovya humaliza buyu la asali. I know for my Swahili folks, you guys will get it. It's like it's a reference to honey and the honey pot, where like bit by bit, like if you go like taking little bit by little bit, like soon enough, like the whole honey pot will be finished, right? Because I remember like when I was a kid, and I'll sneak to the kitchen and like grab some sugar. I loved sugar when I was a kid. And like I would go like a little bit, like I would just always just grab like a little tiny spoon, like like, okay, I'll have some. And then obviously over time, right, they find out, they're like, bam, who's been eating the sugar, right? And it's usually the kid, right? So it's that concept of sometimes it may seem like, well, the effort that's being done, it's like little, but every little bit counts. Every little bit of the effort pushes us closer to a bigger degree of change. And that's what I want for us. I want that for all of us in our respective communities across the globe, right? Because we need positive change. We need positive um, policies that are reflective of an environment that fosters greater safety for all those involved, as civilians, as law enforcement, as policymakers and enforcers. you know, it is so important to do so. Yeah, and also like there's an events page. It also, yeah, we usually reshare events related to this work. And if you are part of the community who does this work, and you would like your event featured on our events page, feel free to DM, send us an email, reach out on the website, again, or you can't miss us, or comment, we'll definitely follow up. Also, if you would like, as mentioned earlier, if you'd like some merch for HARP, connect with us. We have a shop right there on the page. There is a coupon if you subscribe to our mailing list serve, or where you get all the latest updates, again, especially with our weekly blog posts. Yes, go ahead. Appreciate the merch. Thank you. Right. We even have an enamel pin there for you. Right. We got hoodies and t-shirts currently, very, very reasonably priced, and you can slap on the not to be violent, but like you can tag on the coupon code, and yeah, we look forward to it. But yeah, so before we get too far into it, I don't want to take too much of our time. I know I wanted to touch on this week's blog post, our blog feature. I mean, fam, first of all, if you haven't caught up on our blogs for a while, there's a lot of good information out there. And the good thing is all our blogs are quick reads, or usually trust me, like 5 minutes or less, always. And even our featured our downloadable forms, downloadable PDFs and links, all of them are 5-minute reads or less. Yeah, we do have the one street and transit harassment. We have the National Sexual Violence Resource Center available. We have victims and suspect interviews, PDFs, right? And then I'm just gonna, read out a couple of the titles from our recent blog posts. If it's something that you might be interested in, please do check it out. We have Campus Chronicles, Harassment, Assault, and Bodily Autonomy. Bam. right? What am I always talking about? Bodily autonomy and consent is very important. We will have a very amazing guest soon, so be sure to look out for that one. It's definitely we're going to be discussing that further. Um, are universities truly protecting students from sexual violence? Right, that nexus of campus life and sexual violence or sexual assault, sexual harassment in the academic experience, harassment and assault, the privilege of race and Black trauma. Can we talk about it? Can we talk about it? Okay, can we talk about it? Mia Poinsetto, mm, who physically attacked the young boy. Okay, the kid was a minor, and she attacked him, assuming that it was her phone that he stole. Remember that? Oh yeah, I believe she's due back in court shortly. So yeah, yes. hmm and our latest post from the 24th this week was titled "Harassment, Racial and Classist Undertones of Jaywalking Policies." And fam, um, it's like we can hardly go 1 week without without seeing these videos of how Black people are being accosted, harassed, not only by, again, I know, not only, I'm not just talking about law enforcement, I'm talking about just like other fellow civilians. It's like folks are being harassed left, right, and center simply for existing, simply for just trying to navigate society, minding their business, right? And if when we begin to talk about addressing, especially jaywalking policies, because this is something that I've been seeing coming up a lot more again, like, right, because this is tied into how, when we think of how especially law enforcement deals with Black people on our roadways, right? And even when this, if you are familiar with jaywalking policies, it's anytime you're not walking on the crosswalk, right? The police can potentially stop you and cite you. And we saw a huge spike when the stop and frisk laws were implemented. Remember those? Yeah. And there's a correlation there. We're not necessarily ascribing causality, but there's definitely a correlation between how stop and frisk laws are also exacerbate jaywalking related policies, and and other policies that are in the works right now, especially here in Pennsylvania. We'll talk more about that later. I just wanted to kind of touch base with you guys. Yeah, because like, when was the last time you really, really thought about jaywalking policies where you live? you know and oftentimes people just only think that it only affects pedestrians, but when it comes to Black people, it's like, even as a pedestrian, you have to like think similarly to how one would if you're being a defensive driver, right? Defensive driver tactics also apply when it comes to being a pedestrian or using alternate mobility, such as skateboarding, riding a bicycle, riding a scooter, a unicycle, because I've seen those, or one of those adult tricycles. I've seen those too, right? If you're a Black person navigating the built environment, it's like you're always on guard. And then, oftentimes, Black people are more likely to take a very defensive approach to, navigating these public spaces, because it's very, very, very real implications to their safety, to one's safety. A friend of mine, Dr. Campbell, she said something. We were having a chat the other day. We had board games at brunch, and she said something that really, like, it really stuck with me. And it was along the lines of how to to live, or like try to navigate society. What was it? What was it? Right? Being a free Black person can get you killed. Let that sink in. Being a free Black person can get you killed. That's Dr. Kamika Campbell for you. Um, And that's very true, right? Because Black people get to navigate the world very differently from white people or folks of dominant culture, even Black people who are in their indigenous spaces, because policing and the policies associated with controlling how Black and brown bodies navigate society are still very much rooted in colonial mindsets. Right? If we look at the roots of what policing was how policing started, it was all about controlling people, like catching slaves and keeping Black folks like out of white spaces. And so we still see these remnants of those policies, of the roots of these policies. And so, if you guys remember a couple of years ago, there was a study that came out, and it was actually by the Journal of Transport and Health that that stated that drivers of expensive cars are less likely to stop for pedestrians in crosswalks than people who drive lower priced cars. And also, they found that regardless of the cost of the vehicles, uh, drivers are more likely to yield for women and white people than for men and people of racial and ethnic minority backgrounds. As Black people, we've been knowing that. We've been knowing that. Um, but it's a reality where it's oftentimes cited as a misuse of a public roadway, that. But at the end of the day, we have to call a spade and understand that oftentimes these policies are underlined with very real racial and classist discriminatory practices and ideologies, and we absolutely need to overhaul the way we implement policies for in the name of safety, right? Because that's typically the covering. They say, oh, we're doing this for community safety, but it's not always true. And so at the end of the day, jaywalking policies are very problematic on several fronts, and I'll give you five, right? The concept of jaywalking encourages drivers to be aggressive towards pedestrians and for third parties to ignore or excuse pedestrian deaths. That's number one. Number two, these jaywalking policies this highlight the fact that streets are oftentimes not necessarily designed to make walking safer or convenient. How about that? Also, number three, pedestrians are almost as likely to be struck and killed at an intersection in the same rate as if they're walking mid-block, right? And those probabilities are higher for Black people, obviously based on the trend that I mentioned earlier and how drivers behave in their stopping behavior for people who are crossing the crosswalk, right? They're more like, regardless of the value of the vehicle, they're more likely to stop for women and white people than they are for Black people and men. So take that how you may. Number four, when pedestrians jaywalk, okay, they're often behaving rationally, right? And that's why in the design space, what we call that path of, right, your preferential pathways, your preferred pathways, right? The pathways that makes the most like intuitive sense for the user, right? Where they're saying, I'm trying to get from here to there. What is the quickest pathway, or what is the most efficient pathway for me? This is my desired path. I will go this way, right? And oftentimes, when or for various reasons, whether it's a safety issue, whether it's a convenience issue, like pedestrians, when they jaywalk, oftentimes they're often behaving quite rationally, right? And we saw that this last week with the young man who was arrested for when he was walking home from Walmart, right? I guess the police said they were doing a wellness check on him. they were called to do, they said they got a call to do a wellness check on this young man who was simply walking from his place of employment back home in this winter snow that we had. And he told them he was very defensive, and he was just he kept on saying he just wanted to go home. He was on his way home, and he was like, I'm okay, I'm just going home. And they kept on pestering him, and they kept on badgering him. And if anything, they were impeding him simply getting to to his destination. And so they end up arresting him. They end up, obviously they detained him, arrested him, and took him to the precinct. And then the listen, and then the headlines come out, right? And the narratives being spun here is, oh, the police have ever so kindly dropped the charges. Well, why were there charges to begin with? What, like, the charges were something about resisting arrest. Okay, why were you arresting him in the first place? Because he was refusing to comply with you when y'all just came up on him, y'all roll up on him and expect him to just be like, oh yeah, sure. Like, it's cold, it's freezing. Okay, he doesn't have a jacket. He's simply just trying to get home, and he's telling you this is how I roll, and I'm just trying to get home. I'm not bothering anyone, whatever. But they insisted on, trying to run his information, and I'm like, this was supposed to be a wellness check. What part of that course of behavior was in the name of wellness for this client? Because they're supposed to be protecting and serving the community. He is part of the community, right? What part of that course of action was for his protection and service to him? So yeah, so for me, I'm like, we need to change the narrative and begin calling out a spade a spade. Charges shouldn't have been filed in the first place. And then, yeah, and if the thing was a similar issue of like saying he was not using the roadway properly, was an improper use of roadway, it was a similar to jaywalking related incident. Like, because he was not walking on the sidewalk. I'm like, first of all, it was a winter storm and the sidewalks were frozen, so that would have made it for a far more dangerous experience, right? For this person to be walking on the sidewalk because the sidewalk was not cleared, but the roadway was. But he was staying pretty much on the edge by the sidewalk, right? Which is what I just stated for number 4. When pedestrians jaywalk, oftentimes they are behaving in a very rational manner. And brings us to number 5. My final point is jaywalking laws are not enforced fairly, especially when they're coupled with stop and frisk policies, right? That's a very real lived experience of Black people, Black and brown people, you know, oppressed, underrepresented demographics, right? When those in the positions of power do not see those whom they serve as fellow humans, as fellow people in the community, when you're not able to see somebody as part of a collective lived experience, this is why we have these issues. And so, as it, as we have seen time and time again, even in example with this particular incident, but all the incidents time and time again where we see police citing that, these people that they have detained are resisting arrest, is oftentimes because the person is actually behaving in a very rational manner, which means they're trying to protect themselves from being further injured. If you're kicking somebody, if you're kneeling on somebody's neck, if you're punching somebody in the head, the natural inclination is to protect oneself. Like, that's a very rational, and just it's actually an automatic response of the body. So then to then, to then arrest them and charge them for the body doing what it's supposed to do, like, how does that even make sense? How does that make sense? Right? And obviously, like, these interactions tend to end up being quite volatile because, you know, police are oftentimes interpreting confusion as a lack of cooperation. People like if somebody was minding their business going from point A to point B and you interrupt them and you begin to like accost them, of course they're going to be confused, and then they're going to be, like, hold up, like what does this person want? And then they're going to be in defensive mode. And then, oftentimes, as we've seen, again, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's often enough that we've seen a trend that, folks then realize that, okay, um, you know, I just need to get away. But then, oftentimes in police or law enforcement escalate, the situation and begin to a place of using excessive force. So your call to action is the next time you witness these incidents or you experience them, don't forget to harp it. Okay, help us build a robust, data repository that truly reflects what is going on in the community, because it's about time. It's about time that we really get real about, a saying what's really going on, whether it's domestic violence, domestic abuse, child abuse, intimate partner violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, street or transit harassment. Fam, okay, the major hesitations some people have with using shared share, like one of those like ride shares, the apps, you know especially as we move towards, driverless vehicles, smart mobility. All these things intersect with how, you know people just, live their daily lives. It's important that we highlight these issues so that they are at the forefront of policymakers. They're the forefront of the designing process, right? So that as people, as engineers, as designers, as planners, as policymakers, right, as they're doing the work, in service to us as citizens, we make sure that they have these concerns in mind for our true, wellness and safety, right? Because safety is important. The safety of our well-being across the board, whether you're black, white, brown, whatever, across the board, because we've also seen, thanks to COVID, we've seen some, increase of incidents of being highlighted about some harassment towards our Asian brothers and sisters, right? We see harassment towards, various people in different professions, simply because of how they present in society, whether that's by race or ethnicity or gender, right? All these things are very real parts of how we navigate our built environment. And so, with HARP, I welcome you to join the work. If you are interested in this topic, if you'd like to discuss this more, I welcome you to, join the tribe, as I like to say. Join the tribe. There's opportunities to do that right there on the website. More information coming out very shortly. We got a lot of stuff coming out for y'all, so be on the lookout. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day today to listen to this quick PSA, quick reminder and recap of the latest from the website blog. Again, that's at www.harpnow.org. And I look forward to seeing y'all on the next broadcast. I will be posting that soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, connect with us on our social medias. That's Facebook, Twitter, IG, as well as YouTube. And subscribe to stay updated on the latest happenings from HARP. That's the harassment and assault reporting platform. See you on the next live. Ciao, guys.